A very good morning. It's still NTV. We are live from Kampala's Renner Conference Center. Now, just a few days ago or weeks ago, we had something that was called the National Teachers Policy. We had a discussion about it, and very intrinsically, many countrymen got involved. We got excited when we heard how it's going to be implemented, the standards, the guidelines, and how we're going to plug into as countrymen. Now, today a lot more is happening with regards to the Teachers Day, and today is the International Teachers Day. We want to commemorate the celebrations. All teachers around the world, I want to say that we're very honored to be a part of this day. I, for one, I can't be what I am without the teacher. But as per today's conversation, as the prompter says, the crisis caused by the appearance of the COVID-19 virus is significantly affecting the future and quality of life of all the inhabitants of the planet, especially the young people. Now, millions of people are infected and the rest of the people are in various forms of quarantine to prevent further spread of the infection. And not only that, it has reduced the mortality rates. Now, educational institutions have quickly adapted to the new situation and applied the distance education model, allowing remote access to computer infrastructure and resources. This disruption in the education of young people would be a significant threat to the quality of their lives in the post-crisis society. Now, the uneducated, and it can be said freely, the lost generation would not be ready to renew the economic, educational and overall social flows at the end of the crisis. Now, joining me today to discuss this, we are having experts from the Ministry of Education and UNESCO. This show is, by the way, sponsored by UNESCO under the Norwegian Teachers Initiative and, of course, the UNCDF in collaboration with the Ministry of Education and Sports. I'm Andrew Chamagero, and joining me today to have this conversation from UNESCO, I have Mr. Charles Dracambo. He's a national coordinator from UNESCO, joining us for this conversation. And we have Mr. Kamwana Jonathan, commissioner, that is teacher, instructor, education and training from the Ministry of Education and Sports. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Well, it's an honor. Like I said earlier on, I'm turning into an education expert after having gone through the national policy and how it's going to be. I will start with you, Mr. Kamwana. From the perspective of the Minister of Education, a lot has been said, a lot is being done behind the scenes. But as a nation, we need to know, how ready are we to engage the education sector in the wake of the disruption of COVID-19?
Thank you, Andrew. First, allow me to congratulate all the teachers upon reaching this International Teachers Day. And me being a teacher, I think we are celebrating our day here.
Oh, yes.
As you are aware, Andrew, in March 2020, with the onset of COVID-19, many institutions were closed around the world, and even in Uganda. And by closing all education institutions, this meant there was no learning going on. As a ministry, we tried to continue with learning by providing printed materials, running TV programs, radio programs, and a number of institutions started online teaching via Zoom, Moodle Classroom, and very many other digital platforms. But the biggest challenge was that we did not reach very many of our learners. We are left out. And this one is a big challenge. We were got unprepared, and we are trying to catch up right now. So as Minister of Education, we are trying to come up with a framework of a digital agenda. And as we celebrate this World Teachers Day, we are calling upon all teachers to embrace digital agenda, because first of all, we have the problem of attitude. People don't want to change. They want to do things as they are. So as a ministry, we have established a task force to address the digital agenda. And this task force has already done the SWOT analysis and PEST analysis. And this task force has engaged with the development partners, those who are supporting us, like we have UNESCO, we have World Bank and other organizations. And they have held a meeting with the vice chancellors of universities, The task force has had a meeting with the permanent secretaries of various ministries here in Uganda, Ministry of Water, Ministry of Health, Ministry of ICT, local government. And they have also held meetings with the examination bodies like UNEB, UAHEB, and we need to come up as a ministry with a framework which operates across actors, because most of these platforms we are coming up with can offer teaching but cannot be used for assessment. So we want to come up with a framework which cuts across the teaching and the assessment of learning. So we are relying on what is on the ground. So for example, we have the broadband infrastructure across the country. We have the Ministry of ICT.
We badly need that.
Yeah, the Ministry of ICT has, we have the UCC. All these organizations have supported us as a Ministry of Education. Like the Ministry of the ICC, the UCC gave us equipment like computers in our schools, and very many institutions have computers. And this has helped us as a ministry. Now, what do we need to do? Is first of all to come up with a framework which cuts across and which embraces all the teachers, so that teachers can now pick up from there, and then we have a framework where we can train them.
Okay.
And we have started this. Say, for example, with support from UNESCO, we have the Teacher Education E-Learning System. In short, we call it the TEALS.
Okay.
We have 3 hubs already operating. We have one at Nakawa, we have one at Shimoni, we have one at Chambogo. At Chambogo, they have even gone further to do Odell. So all these are coming up, but not everybody is involved. Now the framework wants to bring everybody. We want to bring all the teachers on board. We want to bring all the parents on board, and even all communities and development partners on board, so that they help this agenda. So on this International Day, on this World Teachers Day, we want to call upon all the teachers, we want to call all our partners, we want to call upon everybody to embrace e-learning, so that in case of any pandemic, in case of any crisis, there is a continuity of learning in our institutions.
Absolutely. That is Mr. Kamwana Jonathan from the Ministry of Education and Sports. Joining us online, we have the UN representative, Rosa Malango, with us. Miss Malango, if you could give us your opening remark as we're starting up this conversation today, from the perspective of the United Nations, where do we stand? What do we need to do as a nation? And what is the call to action as citizens? Rosa?
Thank you very much. Let me start off by correcting my title. I'm the United Nations Resident Coordinator and Designated Official for Security for the Republic of Uganda. Thank you very much for having me. It gives me great pleasure to join you today as we celebrate our teachers and the teaching profession worldwide. On behalf of the United Nations system and on my own behalf, permit me to convey to first and foremost convey our profound appreciation to all the teachers in Uganda and to congratulate them on this day. To our teachers, you are at the heart of the efforts to attain quality education that leaves no one behind. We want to thank you for your service and your commitment during the COVID era. But I also want to take a moment to thank all the parents who became teachers during the lockdown. We know that learning begins at home. And during the COVID lockdown, this became increasingly important and relevant. Ladies and gentlemen, today's topic of discussion, digital learning in times of crisis, the role of the teacher in sustaining effective learning, is very timely if we are to build on what we have learned and become better prepared to respond to future risks and threats. The significant efforts that we have made in the short time is testament that if we work together, we can harness digital solutions to address some of the challenges in the education sector. As we commemorate this Teachers' Day, it goes without saying that the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted every aspect of life. In the education sector, UNESCO reports that the pandemic has created the largest disruption of education systems, affecting nearly 1.6 billion learners and over 63 million teachers in more than 190 countries across the globe. While the effects of this pandemic are unprecedented, we have managed to learn a lot during this short period. Like in other sectors, COVID-19 has stimulated innovation thanks to the concerted efforts of government, development partners, teachers, parents, and learners themselves. It has also demonstrated the commitment of some parents, teachers, and development partners to sustain safe spaces for children and youth where they can learn skills, values, and substance at community levels, as I have seen during my visits across the country during the COVID-19 response. On behalf of the United Nations, we would like to commend teachers for swiftly devising creative ways to adapt your lessons and your teaching methods to continue using online tools, mobile phones, televisions, newspapers, and even radios, despite the fact that you had little or no training on e-learning. All of this has been done in uncertain circumstances, with many students and teachers in under-resourced communities having no access to technology and connectivity. So we want to share the concern of the Ministry of Education on the need to reach remote communities, teachers who are trying to support their learners. We want to applaud those teachers who are delivering self-study packages to learners, which is being greatly appreciated by both the learners and their parents. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the successes that we have managed to notice, we acknowledge that the infrastructure and the resources available in Uganda are insufficient for e-learning to reach everyone. While some schools and learners have been able to adopt the digital technologies for continual learning, many others, especially in rural communities, are at risk of being left behind. The COVID-19 crisis has intensified education disparities by reducing opportunities for many of those vulnerable, including learners with disabilities, the girl child, learners from rural areas, urban poor communities, as well as learners among refugees and internally displaced persons. Ladies and gentlemen, as the United Nations, guided by our Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, which was recently launched by His Excellency the President, we will continue to complement government's efforts in various sectors outlined in the National Development Plan 3, including education. Our work will continue to be inspired by a national commitment to attain the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs, which include SDG 4 on education, which aims to ensure inclusive, equitable, quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities, recognizes the importance of teachers if we are to achieve these dreams. Before I conclude, I would like to highlight some of the efforts by members of the UN system in Uganda in the area of education. Through UNESCO, we continue to support teachers' professional development, teacher policy development, as well as technology for capacity building in education, vocational education, and training. Through UNICEF, working closely with the Ministry of Education and the National Information Technology Authority to keep children learning at home during COVID-19, a free of charge, easy to use digital learning platform was introduced, known as Colibri, with the content approved by the National Curriculum Development Center. And third, but definitely not least, through the strategy focused on building an inclusive digital economy that leaves no one behind, UNCDF is engaging with the Ministry of Education to apply solutions to address constraints related to the delivery and access to quality education for segments of the population who are at risk in northern Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I would like to reiterate our commitment to support efforts to ensure that there is access to quality education across this nation. I would also like to use this opportunity to thank all stakeholders who have invested in education and appeal to all of us to continue to work together to ensure that children, youth, and adults can benefit from quality learning regardless of where they live. I invite us all to reflect on what should be done by the government, by the private sector, and by development partners to improve e-learning in Uganda. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world." It is my hope that we may rise together during this COVID-19 period and use this opportunity to use education to transform the content, method, and delivery of learning for all. Thank you for listening, and happy Teachers' Day.
Thank you so much. That happens to be the United Nations Resident Coordinator Mr. Rosa Malanga. I think she made it much, much more clear. And joining us for this conversation, we have from UNATU, we have Mr. Philbert Baguma. We want to welcome you to this conversation. There are a couple of issues she's highlighted about. One of it is teachers training and the digital expression for the teachers. The teachers need to be as alert as the children are when it gets to education. But that is coming a little bit later. Going back to UNESCO here to tap into Charles's submission. Charles, as UNESCO, what's your take on a day like this? I'm sure you have something to tell us from that perspective as development partners in this.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much, viewer. I think, as the resident coordinator has highly, very articulate stated, this day, the 5th of every October, which has been designated through the UN system with the support from UNESCO, ILO, and UNICEF, is an opportunity for us to reflect on the role of the teacher and the motivation of the teacher. In this particular context, we are focusing on teachers and teaching in crisis at the backdrop of the COVID-19 situation. What can be done differently and what can be done better. I think this is known to all of us that COVID-19 has caused very, very, serious effects, has very serious effects on the learning outcome and the learning of the children and even of parents as well. We rightly know when this situation happened, the schools were closed. We have got 15 million learners who are at home. They cannot access education. Globally, we've just got the statistics, over 1.6 billion learners at home. We have got 63 million teachers who are, just at that side. So I think as UNESCO and also as the bigger UN team members, we think we can play a role here. The first thing we need to do, first of all, is to set the policy framework. What is the agenda? Because people might not be thinking about this. We may be going on our usual routine business of teaching as usual. But this is the new normal, meaning that we need to explore ways that we can be able to deliver teaching and learning in a situation where there's crisis. Crisis such as this and other crises that might come. So one of the things that we need to do is to set the agenda, to put the framework in place, to ensure that the policies are right, because once you have the right policies, once you have the right framework, then you will be able to deliver. So that's one of the first major steps that UN and UNESCO is mobilizing the partners. The second one is also to mobilize the global partners. I mean global partners in the digital agenda. We've got a lot of private sector. We have got the civil society organizations. We have got individuals who are all involved in one way or the other in the digital agenda globally. So as UNESCO, we have mobilized the global partners under an umbrella of global business partners to try to interest them and support education, not only purely from a business perspective. It makes business sense that they will be able to make money, but also it makes much more investment sense, because then in the long run, you are training, you are giving an opportunity for children to continue learning. You are providing opportunity for teachers to continue teaching, even in a time when there is a crisis. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. Of course, this comes with, thirdly, the aspect of trying to mobilize the resources. Because we know investment in education using the digital platform is quite expensive.
Very much so.
So we think we need to mobilize partners to come together to put resources at the disposal of those who are going to invest in this service. And this mobilization, of course, will start from the member states. My colleagues from the ministry are here, and we would like to discuss this and put it on table for the ministry to increase the investment in education in the context of digital learning platform, which was not there before. If you are to reach every child, and by the way, one of the things we need to highlight is that even when we are doing this, nobody should be left behind. You are not going to leave the child in a beam or in a Kapchorwa not to learn because it cannot access this through digitally. So while we are pushing for this agenda, we have to ensure that it has to be inclusive and nobody is left behind.
Okay.
So the mobilization of resources and all the support the ministry should ensure that all the children and all the learners have equal access to quality learning.
Well, that is Charles from UNESCO. Now, joining us on Skype, rather than Zoom again, we have another person who is very pertinent to this from the UNCDF, that is Mr. Chris Lukolio. He's going to be giving us more highlight on that. Mr. Lukolio, if you can hear me. I think he's, okay, I'll be having him a little later. We're glad we have Philbert Baguma. We've had this conversation again and again, yes. But from you, Unato, I want to look at what should policymakers be thinking about to ensure that we leverage on the digital solutions. What should the policymakers focus more about?
Thank you very much, and happy Teachers Day.
Indeed.
The policymakers should be targeting the infrastructure. Because you see, when COVID-19 came, it exposed us as a country. We could not continue the teaching learning process. Even when government made an effort to try and continue the teaching learning process, it has a lot of issues. One, we cannot tell who is learning and who is not learning.
True.
There is no assessment. You cannot make it as it is today. Still, you will realize that some of the learners are left out completely. If you are having lessons on TV, lessons on radio, how about the blind? How about the deaf? How about those who do not have the radios and TVs? How about those who have them but the network is not friendly?
Shortwave.
It is on and off. So it really exposed us to that extent. But also our planning was short of such unknowns as a country, to the extent that even higher institutions of learning and universities could not continue the teaching learning process as a whole institution. Some faculties had reached that level where they could actually continue the teaching learning process. Some universities were to a certain degree able to do it, but on the whole, we were caught off guard. And therefore, the policymakers should now focus on the infrastructure for online learning.
Okay.
So that if there is any other eventuality, any other pandemic,
any other strain,
then as a country, we should be able to reach out to each and every learner so that the teaching learning process continues. You can see where we are going now. We are talking of reopening of schools, but there is a lot of uncertainty.
Oh, yes.
There is a lot of anxiety. There is a lot of fear and panic on both the learners
and the
teachers,
even the parents.
Even the parents.
Yes, I agree.
So you can see the situation we are in. And all that is because we didn't have the infrastructure. Otherwise, we wouldn't be now panicking to go to schools. We would have used the infrastructure to even get exams on, and then the learners would transit from one class to the other.
Thank you so much. That is Phil Buddy is coming from, he's the Secretary General of Uganda National Teachers Union, that is UNATU. Now joining us on Zoom, we have Mr. Lukolio Chris, who comes from the UNCDF. These are development partners. Now, Mr. Lukolio, if you can hear me, can you hear me, Mr. Lukolio?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me on that side?
Yes.
Okay. What is the public and private sector doing to spearhead the design and the delivery of the digital solutions in the wake of COVID-19 or in a crisis where we are? Where do you stand as UNCDF?
Thank you. I'm standing in for Mr. Lukolio. My name is Richard Ndahiro. He couldn't make it on the last minute.
Richard.
But just to start also by congratulating the teachers on their day. and also recognizing the daunting task that has been, that is the current situation where teachers and learners have to face the challenges of the COVID-19. To answer your question, I would like to sort of mention the three key things around being able to deliver e-learning. First one, of course, is the enabling infrastructure. And there you have a mix of government investment and private sector investment. So the need for both to really work together and ensure that the entire country is covered adequately with at least 3G connectivity is a big requirement. Next is the need for the tools, the devices, talk of computers or tablets or smartphones. And these, depending on who you're talking to, whether public schools or private schools, could be also a mix of government responsibility, but also private sector responsibility, and in some cases, development partners. The third one, which actually talks a lot towards the role of the teacher, is the know-how. Because at the end of the day, with the infrastructure and with the devices, the capability or the ability to actually use these to deliver the service is in the hands of the teacher. Of course, public sector development partners have a role to play, but it actually sits on the teacher to be able to deliver adequately the learning that is required of them. So what's happening in the space? When it comes, say, to infrastructure, I may talk of, say, the National Broadband Policy 2018, which requires all telcos to upgrade to 3G connectivity by 2020. So this will actually enable anybody across the country to be able to use the devices they have to do learning, for example. So there you see government has put in place the right policy. Private sector, we're talking of telecoms, are required to put 3G connectivity, and we know that some of them are moving towards 4G. So that is the type of partnership that is needed. When it comes to delivering digital skills, UNESCO has already talked of a program they have. As UNCDF, I'd also like to highlight a program we have which is around e-learning for teachers, because we recognize that actually it starts with the teachers being able to deliver, and hence they need also to be catered for. And to conclude, again, digitization in itself is a daunting task, okay? Leave alone the urgency that has been brought about by COVID, but digitization itself is a daunting task, especially with the immense investments that need to go into that. But here we are with an urgency that needs to be worked on, and I don't think it can be done elsewise apart from a strong commitment from the development sector, the public sector, and the private sector. So we are called upon to look for the right models that would help us really fast track the required digitalization of the education sector, models that leverage the strengths of the different parties, talking here of private sector, public sector, and development sector. Thank you.
Richard Ndahiro, please don't leave us. Hang in there. We'll be tapping a little bit more from you. He's a consultant dealing with inclusive digital economy, and he has expounded more on all these. But Mr. Jonathan here, all this they're alluding to, its infrastructure, digital, even UNESCO, even UNATO, and as well earlier on, His Excellency Rosa Malango equally said, if we could have the infrastructure in place. All that you said, the strategy, the digital structure, rather strategy the Minister of Education is coming up with, in how long is it going to be available to the entire nation? We're talking about inclusion. Someone in a beam that can be in position to get. In Nairobi, they have what they call the Google balloons. They fly with the internet. What is our strategy and how long is it going to take us to be there?
Oh, thank you, Andrew. For us as the Minister of Education, our target is to get everybody on board, what we call inclusive education. That's our target. That's our agenda, to have education for all. Like Philbert was talking about the blind, the deaf,
Yes.
and even those in a very, the so-called hard-to-reach areas. But as you are aware, we have challenges like they have mentioned, the infrastructure, the ICT infrastructure. We have the problem of internet connectivity and electricity, you are aware. We have the training of the teachers themselves to use the ICT equipment. And we have the mindset, you know, the change, the mindset. Many people have phobia for using of technology, use technology in teaching. Every time you talk about it, it's something people think is very impossible, very difficult to handle. There's that fear, the negative attitude. So we, as a ministry, but also we have also the fear of the security, the system security. What is that that's going to be used on the systems? How is it going to be managed? How are we going to guard against
how safe
abuses?
is our children's information or the information of us, the teachers? Where does it end?
Abuse of the abusers of the system. All these are challenges which we have as a ministry, but we are trying to address them. We need to come up, as I said earlier, that we have already a digital agenda for the ministry. And this digital agenda is trying to address all these challenges. Because we don't want to handle them in isolation. We want to handle them all together. When we come up with a framework, it can address all of them. We are involving everybody, like I told you, involving various ministries. We are involving various development partners. We are looking for resources. But when we really get out to give a framework to the country, it is something we think will be operational, will be good for all of us. Somebody mentioned the issue of teacher training. This is something we're already thinking about. I've told you we have the hubs for the teacher education e-learning systems. We are saying if we are going to get out there, we need the teachers to be trained. We need to bring the teachers on board first. And already, as with support from UNESCO, we are doing a mapping system about the ICT infrastructure in our institutions and how many teachers are trained and how we can now come up with a strategy to train the teachers. Because once we have the teachers trained, then all these can be addressed as we go along. So we are preparing as a ministry. So everything is in the process. We shall come up with a framework. We shall give the country a framework which is complete, and I think it's work in progress.
Well, you see, that would be very exciting. But where we are, I'm looking at the national teacher policy already being rolled out, yet the digital strategy is not yet rolled out. I mean, it's more of a juxtaposition. We're already telling them, you need to be acquainted with this. They're hubs. We're so thankful they're there. But once they are all trained, the children, will they have access to internet, to have access to all these models, the digital models that are going possibly to enlighten them more about the world? So how I wish you could be in position, Commissioner, to tell us the digital strategy. What time frame are we looking at? I'm trying to look for the time frame there.
When we are implementing the teacher policy, we are aligning it with all these other programs and policies within the ministry. Say, for example, we're talking about the digital agenda. It's going to be aligned in the CPD framework of the ministry. So it's part of, that's why you find that where we want to establish the Uganda National Institute of Teacher Education at Shimon, there we have put a hub. Recently, even ISESCO gave us equipment for that facility there. So we hope that it's going to be part of the training, the package for the training of the teachers. So it's just in time. We are preparing everything so that the teachers, by the time they get out of our institutions, they are already aware and they are already equipped and they have the competencies to handle. Only that we need support. And this support, government is already committed. It's going to give us the resources to put it to, and the other ministries are working with us. Once the infrastructure is in place, then we shall be sure we can offer the service that this country requires. And that's what we are planning for this country.
Okay, that's in the plan. You and I are going to be part of the plan in a soon or later month. But now joining us for this conversation on Zoom, we'll be having Gloria Akatukunda. This is a professional teacher, and in this conversation, she will be representing the teachers about this entire day. Gloria, are you in line with us? Gloria is on Zoom, and of course we have Hannah Nayonga Hanifa, the National Pedagogy Project Officer from Enabel. Gloria?
Yes, Andrew, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm glad you can hear us now. Gloria, starting off with you here, when you look at all this that is going on, you as a teacher representative and a lecturer in ICT, in a place like Kabale, where you are, it has been highlighted as one of the hard-to-reach areas. We ran a story on NTV where the school was at the topmost peak of the hill. With all this in play, with the ICT in play, with the digitalization and the e-learning in play, what do you make of the entire conversation, Gloria?
Thank you very much, Andrew. First of all, I would like to congratulate my colleagues on our day. We celebrate ourselves and we thank you for celebrating together with us. And now to get back to your question, I think digital learning is good and is the way to go. And as teachers, we are committed. We are not, probably some of us are not trained, and maybe we are not ready, but we are trained to adapt. And I'm sure given a little push, the teachers are ready. They have the willingness and the readiness. But what we want to see, for example, in a place like Kabale, I want to see the ministry giving us practical solutions, all-inclusive solutions for this cause. When you tell us digital learning in a place like Kabale, and other places, which are almost like mine, we want to see, can we see the government help us to do this e-learning? Can we see, when you're talking about e-learning, what is the government doing? Have they, for example, subsidized smartphones? I'm asking the ministry, we have a ministry representative, have they maybe subsidized the laptops? Can we have laptops subsidized so that we know that at least every teacher, leave alone the students, but every teacher can afford a laptop and a smartphone to begin with? So can we have data, for example, subsidized, so that what we are talking about is something that can be achievable? When we talk about television in every village, for example, can we probably talk about e-learning centers or something like this? But for us as teachers, all we need is the support from our bosses. All we need is the support from our ministry. And clearly, e-learning is the way to go. Because even when we come back to colleges with an increase of numbers, with an increase of fees, I think e-learning will come in as a solution for very many issues, even now and even after. And therefore, as teachers, we are willing and we are able to adapt. But we want more than word. We want a practical push, something that will make us move forward. We want to see teachers being trained. We want to see programs coming on that will help our learners to come on board. We want to see our government, when you talk about now we have e-learning, who are you talking about? Who is doing the e-learning? Because clearly, like in our schools here, we are not doing e-learning. I begin to think that e-learning is concentrated somewhere around the city or something. But who is doing e-learning? Do you have an evaluation system to know that we have gone to this level in e-learning? We have a number of teachers that are ready to take on the course for e-learning. And therefore, that is what we would like to have from our government, from our ministry, so that this thing can really go on.
Gloria, before you go, Gloria, have you tried to find local solutions and possibly that need to be shared with the ministry and they can be scaled up so that they can be feasible to you because you're within your area and I'm sure there are solutions you've seen that just need to be scaled up? Have you tried that?
Yes, as for example, in our college, we have tried various e-solutions, the very common ones, which we are sure that people know. We have tried to use WhatsApp to get in touch with our teachers, with our learners. We have tried to use...
I'm losing your sound.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, now I can hear you. Yes, Gloria, carry on.
I think that we have tried to use the solutions. Can you hear me? Andrew, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I can. Carry on, Gloria.
Okay, thank you. And I'm saying that we have tried to use the most common solutions. For example, we began by printing out work for our learners and getting in touch with them on phone. We have tried to support some of the schools around the colleges so that we can use WhatsApp. We have tried to use Facebook. We have tried to use learning classrooms. We have tried to use a lot of e-learning materials, but the question is, and the problem actually we face, is that it is not all inclusive. Some of our learners are not part, and that even when you do an online lesson, you get about 70 out of 100 students, and not all your students are part of the lesson. And for us as teachers, we concentrate more on an individual learner, not on the percentage. So if the 30 are not there, then the lesson is not successful. And we have tried, of course, sharing of hard copy information has been done. And for it, it has been a little bit successful, but it is not something we can maintain, considering that you will have students across the country. And therefore, that is why we want solutions where data, where e-learning is accessible to almost everyone, every learner and every teacher across the country. And this is something that can be done. As long as there is the political will, this is something that can be done, I'm sure.
Thank you so much, Gloria. Hang in there. We'll be tapping a bit later to that. There are lots of questions, and I'm sure you're burning to answer them. But let me first stop into Charles. Charles, what do you make of this submission she's just made? She comes from Kabale, one of the hard-to-reach areas in some schools. Believe you me, they are on the hilly scale, and you see teachers competing with students to get to classes, climbing steep hills. And she's saying that they need feasible, practical solutions. And keyword, we need more than words. What do you make of that submission? It was a tough one.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And thank you very much, Gloria. I think it was very important to have voices of people like Gloria who are speaking from their heart. And she is speaking with the experience of what's happening on the ground.
Yes.
I really do appreciate it. 2 or 3 things that I can actually quickly comment on.
Please.
A lot of the discussions since we've been talking here has been focusing on issues of infrastructure and the legal framework. But Gloria raised a crucial issue in terms of the human resource and human resource capacity specifically, in terms of ensuring that the skills, the required skills for digital learning is actually there. Sometimes I think we operate under an assumption that we are going out for this digital agenda, and we assume that actual people who are out there do have the skills. And this has shown now from what she has submitted that we may actually need to deal with that. We may need to deal with the fact that not everybody is at the same level when it comes to ICT, skills. And that's what, as UNESCO, we're trying to support with the Ministry of Education. We want to know the level of the ICT competence of the teachers, as it is right now. So that when we model a course, the course that we are going to model is going to be very practical course. And it will bring in some of the issues that Gloria has raised. Not a standardized course, because then we will say, how do you deal with a situation where you have a teacher who has to climb on the top of the hill?
They are unique.
They are unique. How do you deal with a situation of somebody who is in Bududa and the landslide is completely affecting? And maybe the network cannot be easily reached. So that is a crucial aspect for us to deal with. The second thing about the human resource is the fact of the mindset. The change of the mindset. A lot of the people, especially the generation, our generation and generation before us, we tend to not to be very, very adaptive to the ICT. And people think digital learning or ICT-based learning is something that's very high there. So we need to do something about the mindset, the change of the mind of the people, that it is actually possible for us to administer learning using these gadgets. And when we're talking about that, we should not be thinking about huge infrastructure of the size of this hall that is going to facilitate that. We're talking about phones. We're talking about smartphones. We're talking about tablets. We're talking about basic equipment. We're talking about the radios. So there
Which
is.
she had alluded to that if how they wish this could be given out on at a subsidized price. These are issues Jonathan is going to respond to a little
Yes,
later.
absolutely. That's also one of the issues, because if we want to ensure that nobody is left behind, and we know there's a lot of economic disparities in terms of earning, how do we facilitate a learner whose income level is not the same as that? Are there going to be subsidies? Are we going to waive off OTT so that people can be able to learn?
That would be the best.
These are policy issues that we'll have to deal with. Lastly, she has brought up the issue of local approaches, local innovation solutions. And I think that is the challenge that we would like to leave to all our teachers and the people who are out there. Let's not claim at this level that everybody, all of us have authority of knowledge. We would like to benefit from the experience of Gloria and the teachers who are there. What is it that is workable? I know teachers have done so many innovative ways of trying to reach the learners. Others have made effort even to handwrite information for learners to do. All that is a way of long distance learning, which is encouraged. So we like to address ourselves to the fact that out there could be people who have ideas that we can build on. So those are a few comments on what Gloria has highlighted.
Thank you so much, Charles. Philbert,
Yes.
this is one of your teachers.
Actually, she's my OG.
She's your OG?
Yes.
Okay. She has highlighted things that are very pertinent to the education sector.
Yes.
Two things that were very critical: subsidization of gadgets. I think this is something we have always swept under the carpet. All government is going to do this, but we sweep it under the carpet. But she was particular here. Can we have subsidized phones, subsidized smartphones? Now, that beats my heart on a Teacher's Day, where in Uganda a teacher is praying so hard if we could have a subsidized phone. Let's talk about the issue of gadgets.
Yes.
Across the board, from the teacher's perspective.
First of all, we need also to look at electricity coverage, or call it solar. Because one of the challenges teachers face, yes, you can be having a smartphone, but where do you charge it? That is also an area we need to get interested in. And because of that, some of them will tend to have katochi. Because the battery can take you for,
it lasts longer,
for more days. But in a whole, we need to have these gadgets, and to begin with the teachers. Because a teacher, take an example, if you want to buy a laptop, how many months do you save your salary without touching it in order to buy a laptop?
Are you asking me, Philbert?
Because you know the cost of the laptop. And therefore, if you find you have to part with 3 months in order to buy a moderate laptop, it becomes difficult for the teacher to part with 3 months without touching the salary.
With the current payment.
And yes, with the current payment, and you want to buy a laptop. And so what Gloria is talking about is, one, to subsidize the cost, but also a mechanism how the teachers can pay installments to access these laptops. That is, if government cannot produce them. Some countries have gone ahead to even provide these gadgets to the learners. So why can't we, as a government, have these gadgets given to the teachers? Two, when we talk of these gadgets, we need to look at the training. Because specifically, we need to build capacities of the teachers to be able to use these gadgets so that they can go and help the learners. Because it is common sense that you cannot give what you don't have.
Absolutely.
And therefore, once we are looking at gadgets, we must also look at the trainings for these teachers to build their capacity to be able to deliver.
Okay.
Yes.
That is Philbert Bagoma, the Secretary General from UNATI. Now, joining us for this conversation, we have Hannah Nayoga Hanifa, who happens to be the National Pedagogy Project Officer from Enabel. Hannah, can you hear us?
Yes, Andrew, I hear you.
Okay. Hannah, for starters, what lessons have we learned as a country with regards to the disruption of this entire crisis in regards to education?
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, viewers. Good morning. My name is Hannah Nayoga, like Andrew has mentioned, Hanifa. I work with ENABLE, the Belgian Development Agency. I work on pedagogy, which is ideally instruction. We work in teacher training institutions in partnership with the government of Uganda. And I am glad to be on this show discussing about teachers. And of course, I am happy that today we get to celebrate our teachers. I strongly believe that we are who we are because of our teachers. And so for me, I want to really, really, really take this time to first appreciate the teachers. And in terms of the question that Andrew has just pointed out to me, I want to say that it's interesting how these times have really, really taught us how to try and leverage what we have at our disposal that we have been neglecting for such a long time. I know that this country started to try and harness the use of ICT for teaching and learning quite some time ago. Specifically where I work on the project that I serve with the Belgian Development Agency. We started working on it maybe about 6 years ago. But I mean, we had not picked it up and fast-tracked in the institutions where we work. It was something that we just kept growing and growing and growing. And in this time, we have been able to realize that indeed, the country cannot go backwards. We need ICT for teaching and learning. So what has happened is to try and leverage ICT for teaching and learning and make use of it during this pandemic. So it has come more of an opportunity. I want to look at it as an opportunity. Amidst all the challenges that we could be faced with out there, there's been a great opportunity. I see Gloria here, and we work closely with Gloria and in National Teachers College Kabale, but also we work in several others. We work in NTC Kaliro, we work in NTC Wunyama, we work in NTC Muni, and of course Kabale, as well as Mubende. And in all those colleges, there are lecturers, teacher trainers, managers of institutions who are working greatly to try and make sure we ensure continuity of learning. I'm sure the Commissioner, Mr. Kamwana, has highlighted the Education Response Plan, which has one of the core areas as being ensuring continuity of learning in the face of this pandemic, as well as the other measures that are being taken by the country. But in that continuity of learning that we are trying to ensure together, in the NTCs, we've been able to support things like lesson development. So lecturers of National Teachers Colleges are developing content for their learners to keep learning. You know that the ministry is working on that, but more on primary, secondary levels. So at the NTC level, the teacher trainers are also working towards that. So for me, I point that out as one of the examples of taking advantage of this pandemic to try and ensure that we keep moving together as a country, making sure our education keeps growing, because we are not going to go backwards. The world is moving forward, so we have to keep moving together and ensure that education continues, teacher training continues where we work, but also that we keep growing together as a country. So I wanted to point out that as a major, major lesson, that we needed to make use of this pandemic and ensure that we don't lose out on it. Yeah, I've had several mentions of ICT equipment, and of course, like I mentioned, I wish we can look at it as an opportunity to also try and make sure that those gadgets are available to the people that we work with. The partnerships are very important, and I am glad that the Ministry of Education works with different partners on the several education components. The UNCDF, the UN agencies are working really greatly and closely to ensure that we continue teaching and learning in the institutions, even if it is on a distance level. UNESCO is also working greatly on ICT for teaching and learning. At Enable, if I can mention one of the things that we do again, we developed a one-stop portal that is hosted on padlet.com, where materials, teaching and learning materials for learners in the National Teachers Colleges are. So we encourage them to get there. We try to have a modality called the Teacher Training Education Sandbox for open distance learning and education, where we have several components. We engage in communities of practice for teaching and learning. Of course, we recognize the fact that some of the learners do not have access to gadgets, or the gadgets they use are not really something that can support them. So there's a combination of bulk SMSs to try and pass messages, even if it is not to do with the teacher training itself. It's a message on, say, keep safe, wear your mask. This is how you do, this is how you clean your hands. This is how you can support yourself in this pandemic. We also focus on the GBV matters. So I want to say that the greatest lesson for me, I think that we should pick up as a country is the fact that we have an opportunity to keep working, keep growing, keep improving teacher education, keep improving the education system in Uganda, and not just sit back and wait for the pandemic to go away, because maybe it is not going away very soon.
Thank you.
So we need to find solutions together.
Thank you, Hanifa. We're still going to have you. Please hang in there. It's a conversation we're having. And the topic we're discussing on this International Teachers Day is digital learning in times of crises. So we are looking at the role of the teacher in ensuring effective teaching and learning continues to take place during and after crises like this. And this conversation, we're having a couple of other participants online. We have Richard Ndahiro, an expert in digital learning. He's a consultant. We have Gloria Akatukunda, a lecturer in ICT in Kabale. And we have Hanifa as well with us. And we still have His Excellency, the United Nations Resident Coordinator, Rosa Malango, still here with us. We're taking a break and we'll be back shortly. This is the World Teachers Day conversation on NTV. Good afternoon. Great to have you, dear global citizens, watching NTV this great afternoon here in Kampala, Uganda. It's noon. And those joining the conversation from the UK, from UEA, and of course around the globe, we're so much gratified to have you today. In her earlier submission, His Excellency Rosa Malango, the United Nations Resident Coordinator, highlighted on a few things here and there, but I'm sure because she's traveled around the country, she's seen a lot more things that need to be done. If I could engage you, Your Excellency, when we talk about the teacher change of attitudes around your country while you're going around, what did you identify that possibly needs a critical and urgent attention from us as citizens? Okay, I think I'll get her a little later there. But while we're still having this conversation, let me tap into, do we have Richard Ndahiro? Richard Ndahiro? Okay, the digital ones have gone off for a bit, but we're still having this conversation. Now, all that said, Mr. Kamwana Jonathan, from the government, as a commissioner,
yeah,
as a commissioner, all shots are being fired to the government. What is government doing towards this? I'll start again with Gloria's submission. Gloria was very passionate about gadgets. She was very passionate about feasible solutions. Government could have a framework. Government could have a strategic direction that it's taking. But how feasible is this with those on ground?
Thank you, Andrew.
I feel your pain.
Yeah. Members, I think let us not look at government in isolation.
Oh, yes.
When you're talking about gadgets, we're talking about the framework, we are talking about everybody. I want to give simple examples. How many of us, viewers out there, are willing to surrender their mobile phones, smartphones, to their children to use for learning?
Okay.
You find that in a home, you may be having 2 sets of smartphones. A mother has, the father has, but none of them is willing to give this handset to a learner to use for learning. How many of us are willing to give our pupils, our learners, our children, our laptops to use? It is an issue of attitude.
Okay.
So, you know, you want to have children also having smartphones. The smartphones are already there. We have a number of gadgets in our homes, in our institutions, which we cannot allow people to use. Even at workplace, how many people are sharing laptops? Each one is carrying his or hers.
Sensitivity of the data they hold.
They can't even share their place of work. And these are office laptops.
Yes.
And people don't share them. Now, how are you expecting learners? You are coming to government, but I think, as I said earlier on, it is mindset. Like Gloria was saying, how many of us have been using Zoom for meetings?
Webinar.
And I just want to look at what Hannah said. Let us look at COVID as an opportunity. Let us look at this crisis as an opportunity to learn. How many of us have been using Skype, webinar, these meetings? So all these Google Classroom, these are not new things. They have been there before. We are coming to learn. So COVID is just an opportunity for us to learn a new normal. Now, where do we get? Where are we? Where do we want to go? And that's why, as a ministry, for us, we're not looking at how many gadgets are we going to get. How can we optimally use the available resources that is already in the country to maximize learning for learners? Government is coming up with radios, TVs, and TV programs and TV radio programs. But how many of our people out there are willing to support our children to learn? Because we're going to come up with TV programs, we're going to come up with radio programs, we're going to come up with digital programs, but how many of us out there supporting children to learn? Say, for example, when a TV program is going on, how many of us have prepared this learner at home to listen in and to support that learner to learn? Because all these are issues which are systematic. You know, they are in the system. We should be prepared to promote learning, because every time there is a crisis, everybody says, what has government done? But my question should be, what have we done to promote learning in this crisis? So I think everybody has a role to play in this, whereas government, we look at the providing of equipment, looking at the taxes, reducing on the internet costs, but what will be the impact when we reduce on the price of the gadgets? What will be the impact when we reduce on the cost of internet? What will be the impact when these phones are given out free? Will people be learning? So the issue is, how do we get everybody to know that it's a responsibility of each and every one to help our learners to learn and to continue learning?
I love that. Now, Mr. Jonathan, this takes me to my next question. She hinted about subsidizing these gadgets. And Mr. Philbert Baguma earlier on alluded to a way of giving out them for free. If we can assemble radios here and laptops, some of them are assembled here, can government give out these gadgets free of charge to teachers? Or if you can't give them out free of charge, Gloria again alluded and said, can we have a scheme where we can pay in bits, but we already have the gadgets we can afford? Teachers can't afford some of these.
That is the policy issue, Andrew. I can't say yes or no. There are good strategies we can really think about, and those are very bright ideas, and we welcome more brighter ideas than that. How we can engage government, how can we engage with the private sector in promoting this. I think those are bright ideas. I agree with Gloria and Annette about that, and I think this is the way we should think, but we need to come up with a framework in which to do this. Okay. Just need to do it ad hocly. It won't have an impact. But my first point is very important. How do we get everybody on board? Then we bring in the aspect of the gadgets. We bring the aspect, so that we bring the aspect of the teachers, so that when we promote all these, then we shall be sure that at the end of the day, the learning outcome will be achieved, and then we shall be able to assess and we shall see progress in education. And I think as we continue with media programs, let us embrace the idea of having everybody involved, not throwing a blame game. Government, what has the government done? Ask yourself, what have I done with the smartphone that I have to help my child learn? What have I used with TV programs that are going on? What have I used with radio programs that are going on? Because government is using a lot of resources to fund home learning, promote home learning. We are getting the printed materials. We are sending TV program, radio programs, and all these are being done for the benefit of one child out there. What have you done to support that one child in your home? Government is looking at the million children, the 15 million children. You are looking at the one children. You have the one child in your home. You have not done anything much to your one child, but you are blaming government. So for me, I'm not out for a blame game. I'm calling upon every day on this World Teachers Day to join us in the teaching, to help our learners to learn, especially using the digital agenda by changing the way we understand things and coming to a new normal, using the available gadgets, and also continuing engaging government to provide more gadgets so that we can promote this. This is a very good agenda. It's the way to go.
Mr. Philbert, thank you so much, Jonathan. Philbert, looking at all that, the submission that were made, Hanifa alluded to something to do with the opportunities.
Yes.
She says this train, the crisis we're currently undergoing, it has availed itself with a lot of opportunities. You, as you're not where you are, where do you see the opportunities besides just people saying that, okay, now I'm going to be, you know, digital prone and much more exposed to all that? Where are the opportunities for your people?
First of all, we have learned lessons, but also there are a number of opportunities. One, Zoom vocabulary was not commonly used. And people did not think of having those meetings. But when the challenge came, people had to think outside the box. And they came up with Zoom webinars, and now meetings are going on internationally, regionally.
I was in a summit yesterday in Ethiopia.
And locally here.
Yes.
Even right now as we are here,
yes,
Education International is celebrating online.
Oh, yes.
And it is moving from continent to continent, region to region. Now, it has brought exposure. Right now, there are so many teachers in this country who are now in the World Teachers Day celebrations with Education International, because we have given them the links and they are now attending. But also, we are realizing that we need to do more than we have been doing. Any teacher who does not have the skills in ICT is now quickly learning through this experience, because that is the way to go. Nobody knew COVID-19 would be here. But today we are here, we are grappling with the challenges, but also learning lessons and looking ahead. Therefore, one of the opportunities is the teachers have realized that you cannot do away with technology. Even those who have been thinking that, no, I have my notes, I can go to class and teach. Now the classroom is not there. You have to teach from where you are. And therefore, if you cannot use even the gadgets which are available to you, you see, we are talking about smartphones. Yep. But there are Ugandans and maybe some other people who are carrying smartphones, but they are using them only to receive and call and maybe read a message that has been sent and possibly send a message, nothing else.
They lose
and yet, there are so many functions you can do using a smartphone. And therefore, it is an opportunity that while you are carrying a smartphone, on top of a hill, you can attend a meeting in London. You can attend a meeting in any part of the world. So it is an opportunity. to learn that yes, even what we don't know exists. And how do we reach out to it? Then we must now start thinking outside the box and see how best we can tap into these opportunities that are available.
Oh, yeah.
The teachers, even government, by the way, it's high time that our training intensifies the ICT component. Because right now, if we have the teachers who are not well skilled with the ICT, then it will be a challenge even when they get out of the institutions. And in implementing one of the frameworks of the National Teachers Policy, the continuous professional development, one of the aspects, the priority, should now focus on ICT training for the teachers to be able to help the learners. Because we have majority of the teachers who trained and the aspect of ICT was not part of the curriculum. And therefore, those are facing a challenge. But now, COVID-19 has come with an opportunity for you to get out of that comfort and make sure you go out to train in ICT so that you can move with the others.
Thank you so much, Philbert Baguma. A lot of conversation is going online. I understand we have His Excellency Rosa Malango, the United Nations Resident Coordinator. She's already here with us. And just to bring you to speed, Your Excellency, there is a tweet here that comes in from GDATS. He goes, I was educated because United Nations was at the forefront of all these. While Teachers Day is a great opportunity to say a big thank you to you, United Nations, and all the teachers around the world who went out of your way to make sure that no one is left behind. World Teachers Day 2020 is celebrated, and I am where I am today because there were development partners who believed in my future. Now, fast forward to you, Your Excellency, given that you've been traveling around the nation and you've seen quite a lot on ground in the aspect of education and in the aspect of the people on ground, there would be guardians, parents, or single mothers. What exactly do we need to change as a nation to make sure that while the disruptions are happening, the children or the students stay within the course of the direction of education?
Thank you very much, and I want to thank your participants who shared that testimony. There's two things that I want to convey that I have seen. I think, first of all, I believe we do not give enough recognition to the community-based solutions that are out there. I go around frequently, and I've even gone around recently as part of supervising where we are with the COVID-19 critical programs. So let me tell you a little bit about what I saw. So I recall when I was in Isinjiro, I found a safe space that had been converted by parents who reached out to NGOs and the UN and the local governments. And the parents organized so that their kids could be taught on alternative days. So one group was going Monday and Wednesday, another one was going Tuesday and Thursday, and Friday was kind of vocational training day.
Wow.
The parents photocopied what was being sent by the Ministry of Education, and with the support of the UN, they made sure everybody had a copy, they could work on it, they got some training. What they were asking for was more learning materials. So that was Isinjiro.
Wow.
But let me fast track and let me talk about Moroto, where I found a shelter for youth that is organized by the Catholic Church alongside some local NGOs and the United Nations. And there, what the youth had done is that they divided themselves up into groups. Those who are very good at writing, they're teaching the other ones to read and write. Some of them had learned online how to do soap. So we're teaching the other ones how to do soap so they could learn. Others were good at tailoring, so they were doing that tailoring. So in addition to doing vocational training, they're actually generating an income. This is another example of what is being done at the local level. But I went all the way to Amudat, where again, there was a center for women and girls running away from violence who found a way to use that space to learn skills, to be able to survive, to minimize the exposure to violence going forward in the future. Fast track to Gulu. where again, the University of Gulu, we know some youth who are trying to come up with new apps and technologies to be able to make sure that there's access to education for all across the country. I also want to make reference to, I believe it was on Saturday, the Nagabereka Foundation used the World Girls' Day, the Day of the Girl Child, to be able to have a special session with children to educate them and share learning. So basically using the foundation as a safe space for learning. And this, we really welcome it because we believe the cultural leaders have an important role to play. So let me end with this. COVID-19 was a tremendous shock for the world, including for Uganda. But that shock has now left us with a space to innovate and do better as we recover, we develop our economy, but also when we look at our education system. I believe that if you go across this country, everybody is ready to do so. Just look at the pragmatic questions from the lady who spoke before. What they need is guidance, access to best practices, and an exchange on information on what works in Uganda. Let me strongly encourage this push for subsidized mobile phones. I was so excited to see that Uganda was producing mobile phones. So then let's make sure that there's a quota of those mobile phones who go to those families and communities in the hardest to reach areas. Let us piggyback on those teachers and parents who have already been meeting, trying to make sure those kids can learn and make sure they have access to as many learning materials as possible. And they learn from other teachers what is the best way to be able to pass on this education. And let us recognize the youth, because many of them actually have the new technologies that are homegrown solutions and can be used in Uganda because they're made by Ugandans. And for that, as I close, dear moderator, I invite everybody who was following this to once again, just go to the UgandaYouthSolutions.com website. There are the solutions as part of our innovation challenge on SDGs. And a quick look now, we found solutions from some of the youth that are being proposed, which we look forward to sharing after this show. We have submissions from the youth in Kyambogo University, submissions from youth in Central Uganda, submissions from Rwenzori, submissions from the North, Gulu University, Bishop Stewart University, and Makerere. The youth are already at it. We just need to plug in, and I'm confident Uganda can make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is Her Excellency Rosa Malango, the United Nations Resident Coordinator. She has highlighted those bits. I was touched so much about the parents in Nsinjiro. They got the material, they started to photocopy these materials, sending them to one home to another, depending on those who had not received anything. Charles, what do you make of that? Because this is at a community level. She has beaten me hands down. It clearly shows that we have community engagement already. But how do we scale it up?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks, Your Excellency, for highlighting that. I think what she's speaking is what she observed when she was on the ground. Yes. And I think this gives a beauty to
and she went to a beam. I was impressed. A beam.
Traversing to all these places.
Why I'm so much passionate about a beam in my line of work when I travel there. All I could do was to share the tea and amplify the stories from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there is a lot more that needs to be done.
Absolutely. So she's a spot on that. And I'd just like to highlight that COVID-19 again has posed a lot of challenges to us, but there is also huge opportunity. Because suddenly it has become clear to us actually that there's a lot of things that are happening that we are not aware of. The communities are coming up with lots of solutions to the problems that has been posed by COVID-19.
Oh, yes.
Just think about it. The teachers that are listening right now here, these teachers who have been out of service, they are not teaching for the last 8 or so months. What have they been doing? They have been engaged in very many ways, by the way. It will be very interesting for us to find out exactly how these teachers have been engaged and surviving. For some of them, the survival to the extent that they have been all along relying on salaries, and the salaries are not coming sometimes anymore. So how have they been surviving? So many of them have actually opened up their mind to new ways of thinking. So this example from Isingiro is just to illustrate the fact that there are a lot of opportunities and things that are happening that we are not probably aware of. As I said, always, and opportunities will always only come to the prepared minds. Yes, if your mind is not prepared, what people see as opportunity, you actually see it as a challenge. I can say with confidence now that as these things are happening on, there are a lot of innovations that UNESCO and other development partners have brought in place. We have actually galvanized and brought together different private partners, civil society organizations, to try to identify and galvanize on existing good practices. Just to mention a few of them that has been highlighted.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the issue of teacher training, for example, he was already highlighted. We are trying to equip 3 teacher training institutions with an ICT hub that will provide an opportunity for teachers to learn. So, and then we want to map up exactly, find out what's the level of the teachers so that we can model a course so that going forward, ICT skills will become one of the core competence that they will ask. So a teacher should not go through a teaching institution without coming up with an ICT competence.
Okay.
Going forward, that's going to be something huge.
It is mandatory.
And another example, very good one, is the technical vocational training institutions, still under UNESCO. We are supporting all the 8 technical vocational training institutions, basically those that are doing agro-processing and post-harvest management, so that they do it digitally.
Okay.
And all these 8 are going to be equipped with the facilities, including the teachers beneficiary getting actually the computers.
That is value addition.
So they are going to have those.
I love that.
You have to add value to what you are doing digitally. How do you communicate? How do you do agro-process management and post-harvest management of the stock?
Tapping right there. Thank you so much, Charles. Tapping into that. Hannah, if you can hear us, this is something that is much more patent now that all this has been said and done. How can we use these lessons to change the narrative? All these opportunities you're saying, all these what High Excellency Malango saw when she was on ground, the solutions, the local solutions Gloria alluded to earlier, how can we use all these and we craft them, or we've in a way forge a solution that we can go forward after the crisis? Hannah?
Thank you very much, Andrew, for again giving me this opportunity to share. And one of the things that I strongly believe that as a country we should be taking on is trying to expose as more and more teachers to what is available to us to use. Local problems usually call for local solutions, but also we have those things that are available to us that we are not leveraging quite well at the moment, and we have an opportunity. Yes, there's of course, in the face of the opportunity, there are also quite still several challenges, especially challenges of accessibility and also the level of skilling to be able to use the tools that are available, both online and hard tools. But I believe that we are taking a step in the right direction to make sure that we utilize what is available to us. Gloria there can confirm that what we try to do together in the National Teachers Colleges is to try and bring as more and more of us on board in terms of lesson development, content development, participation in communities of practice, where we plan together, we grow together as teacher trainers and as people who are training teachers of lower secondary education in Uganda. So I believe that it's, like I called it earlier, it's a great opportunity that is open to us. We need to very much so integrate ICT in teaching and learning into other modes of teaching and learning, more of a hybrid mechanism of teacher training, and then we should be able to try and move in the right direction as a country. The opportunity is there, the challenges are there, but we have a choice. Are we going to take on the challenges, or we are going to use more of the opportunity to make sure that this happens? The partnerships are there. I am hopeful for more and more to keep coming, and that we make sure that we use up this opportunity and we don't remain behind even when this challenge is before us. We strongly believe that we should be able to move forward with hybrid education such that we achieve together as a country and as teachers who are really, really committed to ensuring that this country moves forward. I thank you.
I'm sure you can hear me. You're on the other side. Gloria again alluded to something called a portal. A portal where they could drop a lot of content. Now, teachers could pick from there and they could read and share with the students. And those students who have access to such a portal, they could use that. How feasible is that in the digital and where you are, Richard?
Well, I want to give Gloria an opportunity maybe to clarify on that, but I want to say that indeed there is a portal, a one-stop portal, where there is digital content for teacher training. There's a methodology, pedagogy. We try to encourage more and more use of active teaching and learning methodology for the teacher trainers. So they have general information also how to keep themselves safe. They have subject areas that are delivered in the institutions, and it is open to them. But Gloria, if Gloria can just come in there to add more information on how they are accessing the one-stop.
Still with us? Richard and Dahira, are you still with us?
Yes, Andrew, I'm there.
Okay, Richard, yes. The issue about the portals. Al-Yaroun, Gloria alluded to the portal where teachers can pick content and read and realign their lesson plans and all that. How can we make it this? How can we scale this up, and how feasible can it be to hard to reach areas?
Well, so that's really a good question. In our line of work at UNCDF, which is around really getting digital solutions down into the hard to reach areas. In this crisis, I see opportunities. Of course, the challenge is there, but we have to face it. It is there with us. The opportunity that comes with the challenge is that we have to adopt digital, whatever the case. The other opportunity I see, which is usually one of the big issues when it comes to taking digital to the hard to reach areas, is the willingness to adopt. And in this case, the opportunity is that given the challenge that is within us, the willingness to adopt is actually quite high. Secondly, when it comes to adoption at the last mile, the challenge sometimes is around literacy. So the ability for people to take on digital solutions and learn how to use them. Here we are dealing with literate people. So all those are opportunities. Number three, which I see as an opportunity, is that yes, the whole sector, the education sector, is now coming together and saying, how can we define a strategy and a framework that is going to guide everybody going forward? Well, we can go ahead and say, well, we need to have had that before, but I think it's a good thing that the strategy is going to come in place and is going to look at what is feasible given the settings at the last mile. What can government deliver? What needs to be delivered as a business model through the private sector? And that's where, getting to your question of, can portals work? Yes. Then the question becomes, again, do people have the devices? Do they have the MBs to download these? But all those would need to, again, within the strategy that will be built or developed among the different stakeholders, will be to understand what is the model for delivery of content to teachers, and what is the model of delivery of content to the learners at the last mile. How can we bring in the community-based solutions? And it's through that that we determine, does the portal work? Is it accessed on a laptop? Is it, so all that, I think the opportunity we have here, and I strongly push that we really need to provide that guidance as soon as possible, comes with a strategy, which will have to look at the different scenarios, last mile, urban, peri-urban, and be able to provide solutions that leverage the strengths of the various stakeholders, public sector, development sector, the community, but also the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. Back to you now, Mr. Philbert Baguma. I'm sure you had all these, yes, and you could see the conversation coming your way. And I want to, now this brings me back to one simple question. What's the role of a teacher, and how effective can they be in delivering content that is impactful to our children in this kind of crisis? I think that will give us now a better scale when he reacts. Mr. Kamwana knows what is coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. First of all, this COVID-19 has exposed to the stakeholders and the entire world that the teacher has an important role. To the extent that parents and guardians have realized that the children are safer when in school with the teachers than when at home with the parents. And that brings clearly the role of the teacher. And actually, for us, we have called this week Appreciate My Teacher. And we want everybody to come on board. And the reason we have come up with it is what the teachers have managed to do in your life. Can you send a message, just a message? We are not asking for much. Just a message to your teacher who made a difference in your life. If you don't have his telephone contact, go to the social media and send a message so that this message is read by the world and know that, yes, this teacher made a difference in someone's life. We are also requesting them to plant a tree. You plant a tree in honor, in appreciation of the teacher who touched you. And we shall request you, including you, on Wednesday,
Yes.
to wear orange. The purpose of orange, it is our color, our union color. And every teacher, even when we are at home, on Wednesday we are going to be in orange. And we shall request all Ugandans and all other people in the world to put on orange to appreciate your teachers. So the teacher, one, must be well trained, supported, and motivated to do the work. So in all this, we are looking at the teacher. First of all, we are realizing that there are gaps, especially in ICT. So how do we support this teacher who is not well versed with ICT to support him to deliver in this new normal? That means we need to arrange trainings. The trainings for these teachers so that the teachers are able to deliver and support the learners. Because if we leave it at that and we talk, like someone said, we need more of action.
More than words. That was Gloria.
So we need now to train and support the teachers in this field, because if we don't do that, then we shall be exposing the learners to the deficiencies that will be in the system. So we must emphasize capacity building of the teachers, because it doesn't take much. The teachers are already trained and they can easily innovate. So you need to tune them in the line of innovation, and then most of them are creative. They can easily tap into that training, that capacity building, and in turn support the learners, help the learners, and we realize the quality education we are all looking at. And this time they have spent not in school, both the learners and the teachers. We need to have a mechanism of recovery.
Rebooting them back.
Yes, because they have switched off from the teaching learning environment. And therefore we have to have a plan to recover them from wherever they have been, so that we prepare them to the teaching learning
Thank you, Philbert. I'll start with that, Mr. Kamwana. Do we have a mechanism to first reignite our teachers, rejuvenate their energy? Like some of them have 6 months without doing anything. somehow you lose it. If I spend 6 months and I'm not talking to people and I'm not on air, believe you me, I will need like more 6 months to catch up. Do we have that modality within the ministry in the line of strategy?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. As a ministry, we know that during this period, our learners and the teachers have had psychosocial problems.
Indeed.
So to bring them back, we have programs in the teacher education to help our learners, to help our teachers, and we are going to hold workshops across the country to address the psychosocial problems that they have gone through so that they can be able to deliver competently. But coming to the topic of the day, you find that some of the issues we are discussing today were issues reported in the TISA report.
Yes.
About e-learning, ICT.
The TISA report worried me, the 47%.
Yeah.
Yep, up to today, every time I remember about the TISA report, the 47%, I'm worried that my sons and daughters don't fall under that caliber of teacher. Because for them, according to the TISA report, it says 47% is saying if any other opportunity avails and it's not teaching, they would run with that.
Yeah.
So they're not grounded. And that worries me a lot. That's what he's alluding to.
Yeah.
How can we retain them with
exactly
motivation?
That's where I'm going.
Okay.
So, as a ministry, we have come up with a policy, the National Teacher Policy, which we have been discussing on NTV here. This policy has all the direction that for a good teacher for this country in terms of the 21st skills, including ICT. We want to professionalize the teacher. And I want to call upon our stakeholders, policymakers, members of parliament, to know that if we are to get a good teacher for this country, the way to go is to embrace the teacher policy, establish the Uganda Institute of Teacher Education, get the best. You know, when people talk about getting degrees for teachers, they say, but why? Yes, we need the people who are compliant.
Oh, yes.
Yes, the 21st skills. Even at the nursery school level, there are games, or the digital games that children can play on the system as we prepare them for the digital agenda. So we need to embrace the National Teacher Policy so that as we train the teachers, through the 4 years, because this is going to be a 4-year training, we shall now get the best teachers for this country. Then too, we have a strategy to have the teachers who are already in service all be taken through the training and through CPDs. And after that, we look at when we establish the National Teacher Council, even the teachers who are qualified. Today, when a teacher qualifies from a teacher training institution, that is all. We are saying, you know, after every 2 years, you must indicate to the profession that you have been able to go back and acquire new skills and you remain relevant to the teaching profession. So all these are innovations which are deliberately done by Ministry of Education to ensure that we have competent teachers, we have highly motivated teachers who are inspired to deliver our learners to the 21st century. So Ministry is doing everything possible. All we need is support of everybody. And I'm happy Philbert is part of us. He has been there for us to support us in all this with the Teachers Union.
Oh, yes.
And all other organizations are supporting us. Already there are organizations which are supporting us in the establishment of the Uganda National Teachers Institute. There are organizations which are indicating. They are saying for us we are coming. Enable is coming to support us. UNESCO is coming to support us. Everybody is coming to support us because they know the cause. If we continue training the teachers the way we have been training, then we have a gap.
Okay.
We now want to bridge up the gap. So we are doing everything possible. So COVID just got us on the way. For us already, everything was in the preparation. So just COVID got us when we were already preparing this. So we are going to do and ensure that we produce teachers who are good for this country. That's when we are doing it, and we're going to do it. Already, Hannah has been telling about the sandbox.
Yes.
Where they brought simple ICT using WhatsApp, using text message, SMS, and using Google, using Zoom, and they've been able to reach out on the teachers. That's a very good innovation. And I think with such innovations which are coming up, once we capture them into the system and formally prepare our teachers, then they'll be able to deliver as expected digitally.
Okay. Yeah. Just to tap into the conversation, Gloria Akatukunda from Kabale. Are you still with us, Gloria? Gloria
Yes, I'm still with
Katukunda.
you, Andrew. I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. Now, I want to allude to the Dakar Framework for Action, especially when it gets to the girl child. And just giving them education is not enough. While you've been engaging them on the ground with regards to the digitalization of education, how is the girl child plugging in from the ground level where you are, or what you've been seeing? Even with your fellow teachers, how are the women getting involved in this new conversation?
Come again, Andrew. Can you please come again on your question?
I was trying to look at the Dakar Framework for Action with regards to the girl child and plugging it into the digitalization of the conversation we're having of the e-learning. How is the girl child, from your perspective, or where you see it, how is the girl child getting involved? Are they getting involved? Or the female teachers and the likes, how are they getting involved in this?
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. I think the level of access to ICT has been quite similar on both sides, both for the girl child and for the boy child. They're all coming on at almost the same level, except that for us, when our children are at school, when the learner is at school physically, what goes on is more than academic. Yeah, we do guidance, we do one-on-one, we do personal tutorship, we look at these girls and meet them at their point of need, which is becoming a little bit difficult. At that point, I think we are not meeting their needs as girl children on the e-learning sector. Because what happens, like Hannah said, when we come to the one-stop portal, it is a little bit similar. And when we have the teachers, because every National Teacher College has partner secondary schools, which we work with for e-learning and all other physical learning. But when you're working with them, there is no that personal touch. I think as teachers, when we took up this digital learning, we haven't explored that personal touch. And like I say to the government, we need more than words. I think that the learners are also saying to us, the teachers, that they need more than words. So I'm telling my colleague teachers out there that actually even the learners need from us more than words, who are the teachers. So as we task the government to meet our needs, I think that also a responsibility should be on us as teachers, those who are listening in, that we should also come on board and meet the needs of our children. I think that is an eye-opener, that while we were doing e-learning or digital learning, we have concentrated so much on academics. And we haven't actually known, we have kind of forgotten that what goes on in the school is actually more than biology, more than chemistry. And I think that is when we call upon all the partners, the private and the public, that they also come on board and assist us as teachers. One thing I said in the very beginning is that teachers are ready. For us, we adapt. I mean, a few years ago, the government came and said science is for all schools. Some schools had no science teachers, some schools had no science laboratory, but we did it, yeah? Recently, in January, the government came and said, new curriculum. If it wasn't COVID, I am sure we're going to complete our very first year in the new curriculum, and I am confident that we would have done it successfully. So all we are saying is that support this teacher. We understand our role. We understand our position in this, but what we're saying is support us. And like you have said, I think we need to get down and come up with a policy of how we are going to support the girl child and actually the boy child, emotionally, especially outside the academics. But clearly we haven't, especially in the various areas, the digitalization we have done for national teachers and the partner secondary schools that we have been with, we haven't really been so concentrated on outside academics. But I think it is an eye-opener. Yeah.
So much, Gloria. That is, as you're winding up, we're trying to get a few feedback as you're winding up. In a minute, give us your last word, Mr. Philbert Baguma.
Yeah, to all those who are watching and listening in, like I said earlier, we are appreciating. World Teachers Day is the day when we appreciate the contribution of the teachers. And we appreciate the challenges they go through in nation building. And like we have said, this is a week of appreciate your teacher. Let every Ugandan, let every person who can read and write appreciate your teacher. We are not asking much. Simply send a message. If you don't have the telephone contact of that teacher, just go to the social media and send a message appreciating your teacher. Plant a tree for appreciating your teacher.
Wear an orange shirt.
Wear orange on Wednesday. And this week will be for thanking teachers for the much they have done. And I want to congratulate all those teachers across the globe for having reached this World Teachers Day amidst the new normal.
Oh, yes. Charles, as you're winding this up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks for those who have been with us. I just would like to congratulate all the teachers, and I would like to appreciate all of you. You don't know how much it means to every person who has been, successful in life that has gone through the hand of a teacher. So to the development partners, to the UN colleagues, to all those who are there, please let's all come out together, embrace this, and support the ministries to be able to realize their digital agenda going forward.
Okay. Commissioner, as you're winding this up, please take this from me and the entire audience. We were not hitting government hard. We were having a conversation and we're trying to find lasting solutions to the education factor. Yes, sure. What could be your last words to us?
Thank you, Andrew. I would like to appreciate all the teachers out there who have been supporting the learning of our children amidst COVID-19, because they are teachers who have really put in a lot to support our learning on radios and on TV programs, on using the internet, Zoom. And I think as we mark the World Teachers Day, we as the ministry want to recognize these teachers, and I think Andrew will give us, Philbert will be giving us, we have developed a list of all the teachers we're going to appreciate who have really performed beyond the others. We want to appreciate all of them. So when you hear your name, know that the ministry is appreciating. Sometimes they feel unappreciated.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they only hear criticism, but we appreciate you and your humble contribution during COVID, and want to appreciate the support from everybody, especially in implementing the teacher education programs. We have the government is committed, and I want to assure everybody out there, before I joined the Ministry of Education, I thought government does not mind about what's going on, but government is committed to ensure that we produce best teachers for this country. I want to thank the development partners. They have really put in all the time to ensure that we get the best teachers for this country. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. So we are going to get, once we implement the teacher policy have the CPDs in place, all this we're talking about is going to be history. And for our grandchildren, for some of us who are aging, we hope that will be the best teacher that will be handling them at that time.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you so much. That is the Commissioner, Mr. Jonathan Kamwana. We've had a very great conversation today. And those who are with us online, we had Richard Ndahiro, who happens to be a consultant in inclusive digital economy. And of course, we had Hannah Nayo. Yes, Hannah Nayo, who comes from a very great initiative that is, she is a National Pedagogy Project Officer, that is Enabel. And we had Akatukunda Gloria, an ICT lecturer in Kabale. We really, really appreciate you, Gloria. Thank you so much. And of course, we had High Excellency Rosa Malango. And as we're winding this up, Your Excellency, could you give us the closing remark about this conversation? And to those that were online, Thank you so much. Your feedback is so much meaningful to us as a nation, and to us discussing this, you have a role to play as a citizen. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Let me start off by conveying my congratulations to NTV for hosting this e-dialogue on this very important topic. So thank you for a job well done. I want to thank all the participants who have followed. I think this demonstrates the importance of learning and education. As part of my closing remarks, 3 points for reflection. Number one, learning, and it's very well said by the last speaker, we're talking about learning, not just education. We're talking about learning for the current and the next generation. So what is the role of all of us in the society to make sure this learning takes place? So number two, the question I leave with all of us are, who are the custodians of this heritage, of this knowledge, and these values? And today I'm very proud that we're recognizing the teachers, the number one in terms of the formal custodians, but other custodians are us, the heads of the families, the cultural leaders, the religious leaders, the parliamentarians and the members of government, the leaders of industry. We are all part of the custodians of learning. And as such, we have a responsibility to make sure there's an enabling environment for learning for the next generation. I want to recognize the primary school of Moroto, which I recently visited, where the teachers were able to reach out to UNICEF and the Embassy of Korea, and they got solar panels to be able to make sure there's access to water and sanitation across the school. Why did they do this? The teachers were worried that the girls during menstruation would drop out. So typical concern of a teacher is solving a problem for the entire school. I want to also make sure that I call out to all of us to collaborate with the Ministry of Education, the government, and the teachers on a few things going forward. First, we need to develop and adopt a new curriculum that is able to be transmitted in this new environment with new technologies. It has to balance knowledge and values. It also has to balance climate action, preventing gender-based violence, and how we can respond as professionals going forward. Second, we've heard there are so many good practices out there. So we need to roll out these good practices and document them so that other teachers can serve as mentors to those who are trying to learn. Third, we need to enhance access to technology. And I think here we still need to think a little bit more about how to make that happen so that that family in the Mount Elgon or that family in Kabarole can still have access to the e-learning and make sure that their children can learn. Next, how can we assess learning, safety, and mental health? I was very happy to hear the reference to mental health. We need to assess these things continuously. We need to sustain the dialogue with the public and private sector, as well as the development partners. And I want to congratulate the UN and Ministry of Education for this, but the private sector was missing from this conversation. And I know that entities such as Stanbic Uganda, they have initiatives supporting schools. So let's bring them on board so they can help us to scale this up and do this right. And then last but not least, I cannot end a conversation on learning and education without making an appeal to the government and parliament to increase the resource allocation to this sector. Uganda is heading towards its development aspirations, National Vision 2040, NDP 3. We are committed to supporting you to implement quality education, but for that, more resources need to go into the education sector so that we can have a new workforce that is capable of competing in the new global environment. Thank you once again for having me.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of this conversation. I'm Andrew Chamagero, and to the rest of the panelists, thank you so much. Have a lovely afternoon.